IVM.
Sometimes it feels like all the weight of the world is fallen onto my shoulders, and it usually happens on my downtime while I'm enjoying a nice game of cricket. It's like my family realizes that I'm watching cricket and just rush to ruin it for me then. My mom will come in ranting about some problem with the neighbors. My wife will come in shouting about how we need to redo our kitchen, plus also some problem with the neighbors. And my daughter will come in angry at me because the color of the new car we bought is not what she had wanted, which is apparently the biggest crime a father can commit. Plus, of course, some problem with the neighbors. If only things could be just the same, even if something were to happen to me. Unless www.hdfclife.com, select, done. Things aren't so bad after all. Live calm. With HDFC Life, click to protect life. The Life Protect option protects your family from financial uncertainty. Visit hdfclife.com to know more and for terms and conditions.
Here's your smart fact of the day. You know that there is more than just financial capital. There's something called social capital. So what do we mean by social capital? It is something that involves the potential of individuals to secure benefits and invent solutions to problems through membership in social networks. Now, what does that mean in simple terms? It means that you are actually having a certain amount of capital just because you're part of a community, you're part of a network, you're part of society. And we tend to take it for granted. Welcome to Smarter with Sid. Today, we are going to look at social capital, its importance, and how do you actually keep it and enhance it. Let's go. Let's start understanding social capital with a really interesting story. Now, it's been forwarded many times on WhatsApp. It's called The Missing Goat, goat number 3. But it's still a wonderful story in spite of so many uncles forwarding it. Well, it all started one lazy Sunday afternoon. Two school-going friends had a crazy idea, rounded up 3 goats from the neighborhood, painted numbers 1, 2 and 4 on their sides. That night, they let out the goats loose inside their school building. The next morning, when the authorities entered the school, they could smell something was wrong. They soon saw goat droppings on the stairs and near the entrance and realized some goats had entered the building. A search was immediately launched and very soon 3 goats were found. But the authorities were worried. Where was goat number 3? They spent the rest of the day looking for goat number 3. The school declared classes off for the students for the rest of the day. The teachers, helpers, guards, canteen staff, boys were all busy looking for the goat number 3, which of course was never found. Simply because it did not exist. Isn't that an interesting story? And the fact is that this story has more than the moral and the cliche that is coming along with it on the WhatsApp forward. I wanted to use this as an example of how social capital is so useful for us and yet how it can make us so blind, and how we actually navigate the building of social capital in an intelligent, strategic way. Let's examine this a little further. Now, in the case of this missing goat per se, you had the whole, school building searching for this missing goat, which was never there to start with. And that's typically a lot of the goals and objectives that sometimes a society or a network or maybe a workplace or maybe even your building, whether it's a school building or an apartment complex, is so crazily obsessed with. Okay. What I've noticed is that we all invent our own metrics and we all try to live up to those metrics just because we are part of a network and it pleases somebody somewhere. In fact, if you question it as to, why is garbage day collection only at 2 p.m. on Wednesday or something, you'll soon realize that nobody really has the absolute answer for it, except for the fact that everybody believes in it and there is a rule around it. And most of the times, if you look at these numbers 1, 2, 4 or garbage day or whatever it is, those are arbitrary rules which each member of the society is following in order for it to have some benefit to everybody as a whole. But funnily enough, most of these rules are highly questionable, as is, described in the story, and we don't really question them. Of course, the people who question these rules in society, they are called the rebels, the mavericks, and generally looked down upon. But from a strategic perspective, if you look at social capital and how to accrue social capital, sometimes it is wiser to shut up about certain rules and just do them if they are not particularly harmful to you, whether they are in the workplace or whatever. Boss ne bola hai na, karo, sort of thing. And you'd end up doing it because it's more futile to actually argue with the boss about something which, the task itself would take lesser time. Well, that's one way of doing it. That's certainly a strategic way of doing it. But I don't think it is necessarily something that we should continue on, especially if we are in a situation wherein we are leading a team. Social capital is the capital that you gain because of you having a certain amount of values that are immediately endearing you to the network or the community around you. If you misuse it and if you create some arbitrary rules or arbitrary metrics, okay, you're going to end up, being pretty unpopular and disliked. So it's quite important for you to have a rule, perhaps, to question all rules, especially if you're a boss or a leader, and figure out which rules still make sense. I kind of have spoken about it in, the cat who was part of the meditation thing, and I'm not going to bore you about it. But social capital is intrinsically like that because it's not financial, because it's not about earning money, and it's not about how much cash you got in the bank. It is more ephemeral. It is like, how many friends do you have, how many contacts do you have, how many sales can you pull in, how many things can you do, how many favors can you bank on, and so many different aspects which are kind of half abstract and half vague, and but that there is some value there. And that social capital is sometimes extremely difficult to tread because of the rules involved. Sometimes you don't know what the rules are niceties are. And they keep differing from culture to culture. We have all heard, in this country, don't do this. In this city, wear this, or speak like this, or bow this way, or address people this way, and so on and so forth. And I think that builds social capital because what you're doing is you're trying to become part of that community, part of that network. And to be honest, that social capital does help. But in today's day and age, I think social capital has gone to a different place altogether. And I want to look into that aspect a little more closely. In fact, let me give an example about how social capital is recognized by a lot of my students. They all come up to me and say, I want to actually, reach out to people who can give me a job or give me a project or a summer training, thing or something like that. And who can I reach out to? Do you know somebody? And can you reach out to somebody on my behalf? And that's when it just strikes me that these people have not accrued social capital over a period of time. It is impossible to ask for a favor or ask for something to be done from somebody you have just recently connected to. In fact, that goes against all logic, isn't it? And still, most of us try to do that. We try to meet somebody at an event and say, okay, are you interested in my product or service? Or if we meet somebody for the first time, we say, okay, I'm interested in a role in your company. And you've met and perhaps have been one of those people because of the situation that you're in, but it never works out. And in fact, it just portrays you as a slightly pushy person, not understanding the value of the fact that you have no capital. And social capital is this funny thing wherein you need to build that social capital in times of peace rather than in times of war. So if I look at, when do you build social capital? When you don't need it. So you build your LinkedIn network or you build all the connections that you have in your office way before you actually require anybody's help, and nurture them, give to that social network, or that give social capital first before receiving it. And then you might be pleasantly surprised when somebody comes and helps you out in your time of need. So that's lesson number 1 for social capital. What is lesson number 2? My final lesson. It is that social capital should never be actually misunderstood. The importance that a boss gets, a leader gets, is part of that boss or leader being in that community, and therefore there is the power of agency that is being communicated when there is some respect or deference given. It can happen to a teacher, it can happen to a boss. So the boss or the teacher, or whoever is in that position of power, thinks that they've got a lot of goodwill or a lot of strength based on that. And so they start getting sucked into that community and that community's requirements and stuff like that. It happened to me, it happened to you, it's happened to everybody else. Very recently, when I got out of a structure like this, I realized how closely I was linked to completely unnecessary problems and absolutely false opportunities that were there for that particular community. And I was completely invested in that. Without me realizing it, I was, so invested in that because I wanted to actually accrue social capital because I was part of that tribe. It was only when I got out of that tribe I realized perhaps I did not need to accrue so much of social capital. I could have done so much better for that tribe if I had actually been an individual. So it's weird because it has two parts to it. One is that yes, you should build social capital when it is not required for you, and you should also know how not to build social capital and how to be an individual without, pissing people off, of course, while you're part of a tribe. And that is a very, very interesting balancing act. But the only way in which you can actually manage that balancing act is by doing it on a daily basis. So I have actually kind of figured out a formula for myself, which is, remind yourself at the beginning of a day, you are not dancing to goat number 3. The goat number 3 is just not there. I hope this episode tends to make you think. Hopefully it can make, for smarts to happen. It certainly made me smarter. And I hope that, I can spread the smarts if I may. It's a very interesting aspect, this social capital. And hey, if you like me and my social capital, I'm the traveling professor. I'm on Instagram and on LinkedIn. And if you like this podcast, do rate this podcast, to like it, to subscribe to it. It'll certainly help me keep the content flowing. And if you like podcasts like these, my friend, just go down to IVM Podcasts. They've got some really good stuff going. Until next time then. Until next time.
Hi, I'm Rohan Joshi, and on my podcast, the show about crypto, I've been having some pretty cool conversations with industry experts about what exactly cryptocurrency is and what makes it so exciting. If you haven't already, please check it out on the IVM Podcasts Network. Now, a quick shout out to my fellow crypto heads. We've got a listener survey going on, which will take not more than 10 minutes of your time to fill out. So please check the link in the description and help me out by filling it up. Don't forget to tune into a show about crypto on the IVM app and wherever you get your podcasts from.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On the Habit Coach, Relationship and Dating Coach, Yaduvir Singh joins Ashton. He explains how the subconscious mind affects our relationships. On Big Talk About Tiny Humans, Devi Shobha and Meghna talk to Dr. Swati Popat-Vats about container baby syndrome. On Press Decode, Sarah Vagda and Prafula discuss scammy health foods and doping at the Olympics. What's wrong with Joe Rogan? On Smarter with Sid, Siddharth dives deep into his latest controversies. And on Tere Mere Raste, Keshav tells us how a visit to the Taj Mahal can overpower you with love. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. The word of mouth really helps. Also, don't forget to rate us on whatever platform you're listening to us and check us out on YouTube. You can check a list of all our channels at ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Bank of Baroda and HDFC Life Insurance. Thank you so much for making this possible.